Welcome to Senior Living Moments with Nancy Nelson. With 45 years of connecting with seniors, 2 decades of award-winning experience in assisted living, and a heart full of compassion, Nancy brings you stories that resonate and insights that empower. Get ready for real conversations, practical wisdom, and heartfelt humor to help you and your loved ones navigate the journey of seasoned adulthood with confidence and grace. And now, here's Nancy.
Hi, I want to welcome Paul Maxey, who is from Home Instead Company. And it's just a wonderful thing to have you on our Senior Living Moments today, Paul. Welcome.
Thank you, Nancy. It's a joy to be here.
Yeah, so tell me a little about who you are, what you've done, your background, why this topic interests you.
Sure. Well, first, I graduated from nursing school in 2016. I went to Southern Utah University and then got licensed in the state of California as an RN. And then I went on to grad school where I got 2 masters in theology, which could be seen as like a very different field than the medical field. But I'm actually kind of excited to see how I'm able to kind of bring the two together and bridge them together.
That's wonderful.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
We're gonna talk today about isolation as a senior and feelings of depression, all of that kind of topic. What interested you in that particular topic to study and be prepared for?
Yeah, so my grandfather passed away a couple of years ago from Alzheimer's, and they call it the long goodbye. It's not a sudden thing that happens, it's a progressive disease that it could take a decade in total to run its course. And so what I saw with him was a young grandfather who loved to be around his grandchildren, who loved to be
Oh,
around his daughter and his sons and his wife and his friends. And then I saw over that 10-year journey just how the illness and the disease attacked his social uh, isolation, how it caused social isolation. And it was particularly difficult, I'm sure, for him to manage and to deal with. And it just got worse and worse and worse. And so taking that personal experience along with the professional side of being a registered nurse, along with other professional aspects as well. Now that I'm in the caregiving industry, I personally worked as a caregiver back in the day myself with a Parkinson's patient for about 9 months. And so I get to bring that experience as a caregiver, as a family member, as a nurse, all into one. And I'm able to bring that to our clients today for their
wonderful.
best outcomes.
Yes, and as a theologian, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, let's start with that because you talk about your own family journey, which is usually where we all start. You know that we have a personal experience that leads us into senior living. It's not like we wake up as an 18-year-old and think about being in senior living, but I want you to kind of talk about the people that care for people with either Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or some type of, traumatic brain injury or whatever they're dealing with. Tell me
Sure.
about, as a caregiver, you can also go through times where you feel isolated and like you're in this alone and even struggle with burnout feelings. What do
Mhm.
you want to kind of tell us about that experience?
Yeah, I ran into a neighbor yesterday. I was walking down the street and he said, "What are you selling?" And it's like, "Well, how do you know I was wearing my name badge, that I've got
Oh,
right here, but that was it, and I was dressed nicely, but like, and long story short, he is frustrated with his in-laws because they live down the street and they need help. And so I told him what we do. We help people who are living at home or in facilities by providing one-on-one caregiver support. And so in this conversation, it's helpful to explain what we mean by caregivers. So there's family caregivers who are family members who care for a family member who's sick. It could be mom, it could be dad, it could be grandma, it could be grandpa, it could be your spouse. It could even be your child. So that's a family caregiver. Then there are professional caregivers. When you hire a company like Home Instead, you're hiring us to provide caregiver support so that you can take some of that burden off of the family, or even in cases where family is not around, to where we're able to provide that support to care for our clients who need it. And there's this image that's very popular. So I'm going to start saying it, and almost everyone's going to know exactly where it's going. But when you're on an airplane, and they always tell you at the beginning in the video that if the oxygen masks fall down because cabin pressure is lost, you first have to put the mask on your face before you put it on your child's. And
Right.
that's counterintuitive. We would want to put it on our child's face first because we care about our children. And but the reality of the situation is that I can't care for a child until I first take care of my own needs. And then I can take care of the needs of others. And the same applies in caring for a loved one, is that we need to be able to take care of our needs first before we can take care of the needs of others. Because if we don't, we can cause burnout. And if we're burned out, we're not able to give 100%. We're only able to give 50% or 20%. And so the way to give the most is to first take care of our needs so that we can give 100%.
So you're
Um,
giving people complete permission to take care of yourself first, right? Yeah, that's
exactly.
really important. Yeah,
And
we
there's
see
a
that a lot in both of our industries. We just see that where the caregiver becomes the sick one because they're not taking care of themselves. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
and there's a word for it. It's called codependency, which is,
Oh,
and it's not selfishness. It by taking care of ourselves, like a codependent person needs to take care of other people. And almost to the point that they forget to take care of themselves because it feels good, or it can feel good to help others. Other times it does not feel good. And we see that, right? We see when people are just pushed way beyond their limits and it's not healthy for anybody involved. And that's why I want to get involved so I can help.
yeah, I love that. You talked about, I've heard you speak, and you talked about the negative downward spiral. Explain what that is and how we all can fall into that trap.
Yeah, so the negative downward spiral doesn't come from me. It comes from a book that I read by a team of medical experts,
Mhm.
specifically a team of mental health experts. That's psychiatrists, psychologists, some primary care physicians, and family medicine doctors. And they wrote this book in it, and I'll show you guys later because it's going to come up again. But in this book, they drew a picture. And basically the question I asked myself when I saw the image is, what does isolation look like? And it it looks like, and I'm going to use this weird image, but it's going to stick in your mind, so that's why. It looks like a toilet. It looks like
Mm.
flushing the toilet and the water is just going farther and farther and farther and farther down. And so isolation works in a similar way. It first starts out at the top and it takes, bigger events, bigger circumstances. But then as you get pulled down, it doesn't take as big of life circumstances to pull you deeper and deeper and deeper into isolation. And the deeper you get into it, the harder it is to get out because you're no longer at the top. Now you're at the bottom. And this is an image, but the image conveys like the reality of what's going on. And so isolation can start with feeling unhappy, according to these mental health experts. It can be augmented, which means intensified by spending time alone, which leads to isolation and sadness and even depression. And then that leads to becoming less active, which leads to more sadness and isolation and depression. And the system just goes over and over and further down.
Yeah. That's such a great word picture. I'm going to never forget the toilet. Yeah. You said one time that the less you do, the worse you feel. And the worse you feel, the less you do. Is that part of that downward spiral? And can that cycle be interrupted at any point?
That's actually a direct quote from the book that I've been referencing. It's called The Depression Help Book, written by a team of mental health experts. Here's a here's on the inside cover, but on the outside cover, you have three mental health experts in particular listed as the authors. And that is a psychiatrist and a psychologist and another psychiatrist, an MD, a PhD, and an MD as well. And so, yeah, in their book, they that's exactly what they said. The less you do, the worse you feel, and the worse you feel, the less you do. And so when you get into particularly intense situations of isolation and depression, you can see some people who lay in bed and then they don't get out of bed until like the afternoon. And they've been in bed for like 16 hours. Now, I don't think that's everyone's experience with it, but that is a particularly strong symptom of what can happen. And it makes the point that when we don't feel good, it takes a lot more effort to do things that healthy people are able to do easily.
So you and I both work with primarily senior adults, and we know that isolation is a very real problem. We learned that during COVID, didn't we, many years ago, that isolation is almost worse than the disease itself that they're dealing with. And what does isolation look like in the life of a senior? You know, everybody has days where you wake up and you feel sad or something happened yesterday and it kind of bummed you out. Isolation is different than that, isn't it? Or depression is different than that. Can you kind of talk to us about in the life of a senior what that may look like?
Yeah, okay. Sad days come and go. Isolation is a sadness that doesn't go away.
Yeah.
If it does go away, it only goes away temporarily. So we have a baseline. And when I was in nursing school and before, when I was doing my prerequisites, they would have these graphs and it would show the baseline, and then something good would happen and you'd go up, and then you would come down and you'd stabilize again. And then you'd be going across at your baseline, and then something bad would happen and you would dip, and then you come up again and return to baseline and you continue across. Now, the problem is when your baseline is below feeling content or feeling, like joyful. And so if your baseline is underneath that threshold, does that mean that you're never going to experience joy? No, it just means that when joyful things happen, you'll experience joy, and then after you'll equilibralize back down to that baseline, and you'll be again in a position of sadness, and isolation. And so in my mind, based off of, the research that I've done as well, I really think that the the proof is in the pudding, and the pudding is that baseline. I think that's where it's at.
And I think all of us, you said that we all have a sense of what our baseline when we're content and it feels like a good place that we're living at. I appreciate that word picture. That really does help to explain it. So, what could somebody do that is feeling isolated? Maybe a senior that's living alone at home, or somebody that's even in a community that's kind of staying in their room. What are some proactive ways to combat some of those feelings of isolation, sadness, depression? Can one help themselves out of that by doing a few things?
Yeah, okay. So the answer I'm going to give, again, does not come from me. It comes from a team of experts, of medical doctors and experts. And the way that they put it is that there's a multi-dimensional approach. So I think that sometimes we can think that like, oh, sadness is just wrong thinking, and that I need to pull myself up by my bootstraps and I'm going to get over this by telling myself that things are okay when I'm
Yeah, be happy,
actually,
be happy. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, when I'm actually sad.
Mhm.
And I don't think that's how it works. I think that a multidimensional approach is the best. So the first part is social. And that is what companies like ours and companies like Belmont, that's what we're able to do for people who are isolated and at home and not able to do the things that healthy people are able to do. Like, for example, driving. If you can't drive, then how is it that you're going to get out of the house? Something as simple as going to the grocery store. I was talking to a client on Monday. She just likes going to the grocery store. Why? Because it puts her around people. And if you can't drive, then like you can't go to the grocery store unless someone drives you. And that's where it takes some creativity, is saying like, okay, well, now as my limitations are growing, how am I going to be creative so that I can live the highest quality of life that I can?
Yeah, I love that.
And so for our services, our caregivers will drive our clients to the grocery store or to a senior center or to church. I think a lot of people like to go to church to socialize. Um, so those are some examples of how our services can help someone who's struggling with isolation. I also know Belmont, you guys have a list of social activities that happen every single day at your communities.
Right. Lots of opportunities to even if you don't want to participate in the programming, you can sit and watch people that are, and that alone is wonderful, that socialization. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
You
that's
said there were two other things. Are you going to talk about those later? The social aspect and then
yeah. So the first of the two is the social aspect, which is what we've been talking about. The second one is medical. And I think that both of these go well hand in hand. Um, because when we experience sadness and isolation, especially for prolonged periods of time, and then when we have other health issues like pain, if we're living in pain, these things can cause a chemical imbalance in the way that the brain works. And so a medical assessment is important as well. And the way that our medical system works is you go to your primary care doctor, and they have two tasks. Their first task is to treat general, ordinary, common ailments. Then their second task is to refer us to specialists, because if you went to medical school and you tried to study every specialty out there, it would take multiple lifetimes, because that's how complex the human body is. And so instead of depending on a doctor to be a super brain and to be able to do all of that, the medical system has split up doctors into specialties. And so if you have a client who's suffering from dementia, which we see at Belmont, which we see at Home Instead, our patients should be seeing neurologists, because neurologists are specialists, medical specialists who focus on treating uh, illnesses of the brain and of the nervous system, and dementia is one of those. If you're struggling with sadness and isolation and possibly even depression, the specialist that you want to see is a psychiatrist. That's a medically trained medical doctor who has focused their studies and their clinical experience on treating ailments such as depression, such as anxiety, and other conditions as well. And so instead of self-diagnosing and saying like, okay, I think that I may be sad, or I think I may be isolated, or I think I may be depressed, we don't really have to depend on ourselves. We can go to the specialist and let the specialist do their job and give us their professional opinion
yeah.
and their diagnoses.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for all that information, because sometimes that is part of our why we get stuck, right? Because we just don't know who to go to. We don't know who to talk to about the way that we're feeling and experiencing.
Yeah.
You mentioned illness and injury, chronic pain. So all of those could play a role in why we feel depressed and sad?
Oh, yeah. So in this book, they have a chapter specifically on this topic, and it's called Depression and Chronic Medical Illness. So I'm going to read some quotes because these are coming from the professionals themselves. These are coming from psychiatrists and medical doctors. Uh, they say, more often, chronic illness can contribute to depression because of physical discomfort, disturbed sleep, that's a big one, or limitations on your activities. Withdrawing from pleasant or rewarding activities is both a major effect and a major cause of depression. Persistent pain is also a common cause of depression and fatigue. And so if our loved one is suffering from a painful medical condition, it could be that they're recovering from a fall, that they broke their hip or they broke their arm or, something like that. Maybe they have arthritis. Arthritis is very painful, depending on the type and the severity of the condition. Arthritis can be very, very painful. And so there's a link between physical pain and sadness, isolation, and depression. There's a link between not being able to do certain things, not being able to do things that we used to be able to do, and feeling sadness, isolation, and depression. And so when we identify these things, it's important to say, okay, grandma's in pain. Maybe she also needs to be assessed for sadness, isolation, or depression as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, Paul, I think I told you that a few years ago, I had 2 hip replacements and I had that kind of chronic pain. And I told myself I was never going to forget what that did to even your psyche, your personality, you feel like you don't want to be with people because it's embarrassing to be hobbling or limping or, needing support in that way. And I never want to forget what chronic pain does because we see that a lot in senior living. And I appreciate your thoughts on that as well.
My mom had a hip replacement maybe a
Yeah.
decade or two ago,
Yeah.
and it's not only painful on the patient, we're empathetic and we love our
Yes.
family and our loved ones, and
Yeah.
it's painful on the people around them when they see someone in so much pain.
Yes, I know even things like fibromyalgia and all of those things can have a profound effect on your psyche and your spirit as well. Yeah.
Fibromyalgia is very painful from what I've
Yeah.
heard. I listened to a talk recently by a neurologist, I believe it was a neurologist, and he was talking about that and chronic
Yeah.
pain. And you
Yeah.
can't see it. You can take someone
Yes.
who looks healthy and normal, and on the
Yes.
inside, they're actually can be enduring severe levels of pain.
Yeah, isn't that funny too? Because when you see somebody, maybe they've got a black and blue eye or they've got a set of stitches on their head, everyone's so empathetic towards that. But when it's a hidden pain, you feel like you carry that alone sometimes. It breaks your spirit in a way.
Yeah.
Let's talk about you mentioned that you work for Home Instead, which is a companion services, a wonderful company. And so tell us a little bit. You mentioned a few things at the beginning, but what are some of the other ways that you might want to reach out for somebody like yourself to come and be with you in the home front?
Sure. Yeah. On Monday, I was with a couple, elderly couple, probably in their 80s, maybe even 90s. And I walked into their home and instantly you could instantly tell that, okay, they definitely need some assistance in their home. They want to age at home, and a lot of people do. But what was obvious is that ordinary things that younger people can do for themselves, like dusting the house, opening up the house so fresh air can get in. I walked in and one, you could smell that the house probably hadn't been opened up for, I don't know, months or years.
Yes.
And there was dust, there was piles of stuff, there was the coffee table just was covered in medication bottles, which as you get older, the number of medications that you have to take depending on your conditions are going to be a lot more than when you're young and healthy. But I could instantly see that our assistance it would be helpful, especially to meet the needs of what the clients want. Our owner is one of our owners is named Nick Singh, and he shared at a talk recently that both you and I were at that he had a client that he did a consult for, and they go through with the family and the client. The client was 80 or 90 years old, and at the end of going over our services and how it is that we could help, the client said, "No, I don't want the help." And so, he said, okay, that's fine. You don't want the help. We went through what it is that we do. And the next week he was in the office and he asked one of his colleagues, do you know what happened to that woman? And she said, yeah, she had a fall and she passed away. And
Wow.
it happened so fast. It was within a week's time. And that has helped for me to say, you know what, like, we're professionals in the senior care industry, both Belmont and Homestead. And we can have insights that people who are going through it for the first time or the second time that they don't have because they're not dealing with this on a daily basis. They're not working with other professionals in other that do other aspects of senior care. And to have confidence in those recommendations when you identify that, okay, there's a need for outside care. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and it's really not when you reach out for that kind of assistance, it's not that you're giving up control or that you're admitting to failure. It's not that at all. It's just that at any time of our lives, we sometimes need help. When your little child falls off their bike and skins their knee, the parents don't stand at a distance and say, well, good luck. I hope you heal from that. We rush to the person and we try to love them and help them and put that band-aid on their knee. And I think it's the same way when we're a senior. We just have to kind of maybe sometimes lay down our pride or lay down those feelings of that I'm a failure if I have to ask for help and realize that there's this whole group of people out there that that's what they do professionally and they love to help. They want to help. So I love what you do, Paul, and I even have a recommendation for you later on today. So
Ooh, I like the sound of that.
yeah. We were talking about socialization, and I want to go back to that just for a minute. It's so kind of crazy when you're feeling sad and depressed. The last thing you feel like doing is socializing with people, right? You don't want to talk to people. You don't want to sit at a table where other people are. I've had, ladies or men that have come to me and said, "I'll go down in the dining room and eat, but I don't want to sit with anybody. I just want to sit by myself." Well, that even in and of itself, just going down to a social environment is a great step in the right direction, right? It's a small step to put you in a place. There was another man that he would come down every day. His family said he won't want to be where other people are. He is a recluse. He likes to be by himself. And he came down and pulled out the paper, and you could see that behind the newspaper that he was kind of hiding behind, he was also answering the trivia questions that were going on. He was tapping his foot to the music. That somehow just being in the presence of other people gave him that sense of socialization. So what are some other small steps that people could do?
I love that example that you gave of, even if you don't feel up to talking to people, just being around people is a big thing. And some people are introverted and they need their introverted time. Other people are
Yes.
extroverted and they thrive off of being around other people and socializing. And but I think most of us are probably somewhere in the middle. And being in the middle, it says that, okay, well, I need my time around people, but then I also need my time to myself. And each
Right.
person, that balance could be different. Ooh.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that's another service that Home Instead offers, right? I remember my dad was living alone after his wife passed away, and he would go down to the local eatery just so that he could be among people. And he didn't really sit with anybody. He didn't talk to anybody. But on his way out, he always kibitzed with the restaurant manager a bit. And that would that be something that Home Instead could also do? Just take you out to coffee or take you out to a restaurant.
Absolutely. If we have clients who want to go out to lunch or go out to coffee I've had a client who likes to go to the beach
Mm,
and the caregiver drives them to the beach and it's
that's wonderful.
able to get them out of the house and doing things that they enjoy doing that they used to be able to do on their own, but now they need help doing it. And there's no problem with needing help doing it. And I think that's where sometimes it can be, you know, discouraging is like, oh, I used to be able to do this,
Right.
but now I need help to do it. Therefore, I just don't want to do it. And when it comes to isolation and loneliness and depression, the battle is saying, okay, I know I can't do what I used to be able to do on my own, but I'm going to give it my all anyways. And if that's 50% of what I used to be able to do, then that's
Right.
50%. I
Yep.
think isolation and depression, part of the battle is giving up entirely and saying, I can't do 100%, therefore I'm going to do nothing.
Yes.
And
Good point.
it's very human. It's very natural and normal to have that mentality.
Yeah.
But the problem is that it causes the downward spiral. It causes the toilet effect. And
Right.
so what you guys do at Belmont and what we do at home instead is getting creative and saying, we're not giving up. We're not taking no as an answer. We're not taking 0% as an answer anymore. We are going to give it everything that we have, even if it's only 50% of what we used to be able to do.
I love that. That's great. Stay out of the toilet is our mantra for the day. So tell me, what if I'm a family member listening to this podcast and listening to you share, and it's not about me, but it's about my loved one. Is there anything family can also do to help make it easier for seniors that are struggling with depression or loneliness?
Yeah, visit,
Yeah.
spend time, reach out, be proactive, um, get involved, see what's going on. I know, if you're living in a different state, it's different, but then you can make phone calls, um, advocate, because the elderly and the sick, oftentimes, like if you have dementia, you're dependent on others to advocate for you,
Right.
with your doctors to explain what's going on. And dementia is a very normal part. It's not normal, but it's a common enough part of the aging experience for some people. And so yeah, I think family members being involved is immensely helpful and important, but don't feel like you have to do it all on your own, because if you take on all that burden, you can get resentful, you can get burned out, and then you're not able to give as much and you're not able to help because you're burned out and you're strung out and you're not happy about it. And
Right.
that's human and reasonable and understandable too. So to say, what is it that I can do? What is it that I can outsource? And what are my resources available to giving my parents or my grandparents or my spouse or my child the the best experience possible?
Yes, that's great. What can I do myself? What can I outsource? What are my resources? Right. That's wonderful. I was thinking all the times that I've seen seniors sitting in their apartments looking at that card that their loved one sent 3 months ago, reading it like it's the very first day they've ever read it and enjoying it all over again. So really, even just, sending a card or writing a letter to them, they'll read that over and over and over. If you don't need to make 1 hour phone calls, just make a 5 minute phone call that they can just anticipate and look forward to. So you're right. We sometimes put too much pressure on ourselves as family members, even. And we're not here to fix it. We don't have to fix their sadness. We just have to do what we can do to give them some joy along the way too.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I know that we're just about at the end of this, but if you wanted to summarize kind of what we've been talking about isolation, depression, and I know you mentioned the social aspect, you also mentioned the medical aspect. Just maybe give us a few social steps, a few medical steps. Just remind us of those things as we close this podcast.
Okay. Yeah. Social steps would be getting out of the house, uh, putting things on the calendar to look forward to, and tapping into the resources out there in order to make those things possible if the client and the patient can't do these things for themselves. So those are some social steps. And then some medical steps is get an assessment, see a specialist, see a psychiatrist, get that assessment. And then when you have that assessment, and then following the advice of the medical experts who have a very valuable specialty, and that's why their specialty exists. Because these problems that we are talking about are real, and they're not imagined, they're real, and they can cause chemical imbalances in the brain. And so that requires actual medical intervention to correct. And then when you have both of those things working together, the social and the medical, now you're going to form from a downward spiral, you're going to form an upward spiral that gets bigger and bigger and bigger with more hope, more joy, and better health outcomes.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much, Paul, for all that you shared today. I even learned some things myself, so I appreciate that. I'll never look at my toilet the same way, too. So
Well, thank you,
it was
Nancy,
really
so
great.
much.
So this concludes another episode of Senior Living Moments. I'm Nancy Nelson, and I want to thank Paul Maxey from Home Instead. If you have a need, if you want to reach out, we are here to serve you and help you. You do not have to be a senior living alone, not getting the help that you need. We're right here ready to assist.